Thank you very much, Madam Titi and Chris, for that brilliant explanation of what equity and inclusive budgeting is and how the PERL Equitable Budgeting Guide is to be used. Before I continue, can we find out from the participants if they already collect and present disaggregated budget and service delivery data by sex, that is male and female, by age group, that is children, youth, and elderly, by income groups, by differently abled groups, or by hard to reach locations? Can we spend 20 to 30 seconds to do this? Thank you to everyone who has responded to the poll. Let us now move on to look at promoting equity throughout the budget process. The budget is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. It is and should be a tool for policy implementation. Budget expresses government's priorities in a financial plan for implementation over a period of time, usually a year for annual budgets. If budgets are not policy-oriented, the chances are that public resources may be frittered away on things that do not address the needs of the citizens. So it is important that we look at the linkage between policy, plan, and budget. The linkage between policy, plan, and budget is achieved through the medium-term expenditure framework, which is a top-down decision-making about resource allocation, and a bottom-up determination of needs. The diagram on slide 20, which can be found on page 9 of the guide, illustrates the MTEF process. It starts with the determination of aggregate resource envelopes for the state, otherwise known as the medium-term fiscal framework or fiscal policy, to achieve the overarching state policy priorities as contained in the State Development Plan. This aggregate resource envelope is divided up among the sectors according to the priorities of the state to guide them in formulating and costing their sector plans or strategies, which are derived from the State Development Plan. These broad sector resource allocations constitute the medium-term budget framework, and sectors receive resource allocation according to the state priorities for them. For instance, if education is the highest priority of the state, it may be allocated the highest percentage of the available resources compared to other sectors. The sector envelopes are shared among the MDAs in each sector, and these form the ceilings within which the sectors and MDAs cost their projects and activities. The costed projects and activities form the basis for annual budget submission by the MDAs. I took this time to explain this because of the seeming misunderstanding that is often associated with the concept of MTEF, which ensures that the budgets address policy priorities of government and that there is a strategic process involved in doing that, and that budget is not an empty annual ritual, as some people may want to believe. Let us now go into more details to look at the 4 key stages in the annual budget process. The figure in this slide illustrates the core annual budget cycle and the documentation or outputs from each stage in the cycle. First is the budget planning and preparation stage, in which the state sets its strategic policy priorities for the annual budget, drawn from the state development plan. At this stage, the annual budget calendar or timetable, which guides the various budgeting activities for the year, is formulated and issued. The budget core circular, which provides, amongst other things, the guidance on state policy trust for the year, the sector FDA resource envelopes, and formats or templates for the budget preparation and submission, is also issued at this stage. Bilateral discussions between the Central Budget Agency and MDAs are held at this stage for the MDAs to justify their proposed estimates. Also, in this stage, civil society groups representing citizens' constituencies are meant to engage with the sectors and MDAs to ensure that their interests are adequately represented in the budget. And what emerges from this stage is the draft proposed budget, which is sent to the executive. This stage is a very important stage because it is the formulation stage of the budget, and it is, if it is faulty, it may impair the effectiveness of the budget. The next is the budget approval stage. There are 2 levels of approvals for the budget: the executive approval by the State Executive Council and the legislative approval by the State House of Assembly. The Executive Council considers and approves the draft budget sent to it by the Central Ministry in charge of budget, and this becomes the proposed budget, which the governor then presents to the State House of Assembly for their consideration and passage. Civil society or citizen constituencies should participate in a public hearing, and the key output of this stage is the approved budget or the annual appropriation law. The 3rd stage of the budget cycle is the implementation or execution stage. This is a very crucial stage of the budget, and it's oftentimes the most problematic stage. There's often the tendency for the budget to be distorted at the stage of implementation, either deliberately or unintentionally. But there are key tools that can enable an orderly implementation of the budget. These include capital budget work plans or budget profiles, procurement plans, cash plans, and regular budget performance reports. And where it becomes absolutely necessary, like in the case of this year with the COVID-19 outbreak, there could be budget revisions to respond to emergency needs. Otherwise, people who implement the budget should stay on course and implement the budget diligently as made in order to achieve the policy intentions of the budget. The 4th and final stage of the annual budget cycle is the monitoring, evaluation, and oversight stage. This is important to ensure that those who implement the budget are supervised and held accountable for the resources put in their charge to produce and deliver public goods and services. Internally, the Central Budget Agency and other center of government agencies should monitor the budget implementation or aspects of it to ensure that they are on good course. Also, the civil society, especially target beneficiaries for particular projects, should be involved in the monitoring of budget execution within their domains The State House of Assembly should also provide oversight function to ensure that the budget they approved is executed as intended. Finally, the Auditor General should provide continuous audits and annual statutory audits to ensure that financial rules and regulations are followed in implementation of the budget, and provides the audit reports to the Public Accounts Committee of the House of Assembly for scrutiny and necessary action. Let's look at the actions that can engender equity in the budget preparation stage. There are 4 key actions to be taken during budget preparation to ensure that equity is mainstreamed at this stage. First is to define or identify who the marginalized groups are and what their needs or preferences are. And this has to be done within the political and cultural context of the population involved. Second is to generate a list of equity indicators that can enable measurement of achievements on equity consideration in the budget. Third is to analyze the budget allocations with respect to equity considerations. And finally, is to deploy the tools for gender responsive and socially inclusive planning and costing for projects in the budget. To ensure that equity is mainstreamed during the budget review and approval stage, we need to confirm and validate that the demands of citizens groups, especially the vulnerable and marginalized, are included in the budget. These groups are often championed by relevant civil society organizations or community-based organizations. Secondly, we need to ensure that budget is accessible to citizens in the language and media that are within their reach. For instance, the budget can be translated into local languages or dialects such as Hausa, Kanuri, or Fulani languages, and making the citizens' budget widely available to the population. There should be equity throughout the budget implementation process. This can be achieved through equal access or even preferential access to local, micro, small, and medium enterprises in procurement for budget implementation. Especially at these times of COVID-19 pandemic, small businesses are struggling to survive. They should be given a fair chance to participate in government procurement without compromising value for money. Secondly, there should be appropriate disaggregation of budget execution data to reflect the target beneficiaries in a measurable manner. Thirdly, in the event of a supplementary budget, amendments, as we are witnessing this year on account of the COVID-19, allocations to disadvantaged groups must be protected. Diverse groups such as civil society organizations and community-based organizations should be involved in the budget implementation. They should know who have been awarded a project and get involved in monitoring project execution and protecting assets at project sites. Finally, there should be an effective monitoring and evaluation framework to enable tracking and measurement of beneficiary incidents in budget execution. The budget monitoring, evaluation, and oversight must also have equities considerations, and this can be achieved by improving the collection and analysis of disaggregated data, ensuring that financial and non-financial budget monitoring reports include equity measures, that external evaluation and analysis of budget spending should include equity indicators, and that finally, civil society organizations representing marginalized groups are involved in the process of monitoring, evaluation, and oversight. Let us now look at some examples of equity indicators. Though equity indicators are often complex to define, They are designed to measure service coverage across differentiated social and economic groups and should be consistent with service delivery specifications and charters. Some output level equity indicators may include maternal death rates by local government, number of loans awarded to able male and able female youths, and male and female disabled youth under small business initiatives. Another example could be provision of water for certain number of beneficiaries, including certain number of male and female children, certain number of male and female youth, and certain number of men and certain number of women. And finally, another example could be percentage of schools accessible to disabled students, or percentage of disabled children having access to special education facilities. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. I will now hand over to our able moderator, Margarita, for the next session. Thank you.